she goes to Paris. Makes me cry. It's a 5-star. There's no question about it. Or is it? It is hot as fuck. I literally can throw stones and hit people who have read books. Hi everybody, I'm Kirsten, and if you're new here, then welcome. If you're not, you're lying because you're all new, because this is my first ever YouTube video. And today we're going to be going over my master list fantasy romance books. These are the books I just recommend all the damn time, whether out in the wild, talking online, or even recommending them to my mum, because yes, she's a fantasy romance girl now too. We're going to cover light fantasy romance, dark fantasy romance, and we're going to start with super light in the diet dark romance all the way through to dark, and then we're going to cover just your run-of-the-mill fantasy romance books. But anyway, this is pretty much a dedicated fantasy romance discussion. We're going to do it while I get ready to run chores because it is a Sunday in Australia. Anyway, without further ado, let's go. Let's start with light fantasy romance. These books are easy to read. They're normally young adult, and I find them just so easy to digest. If you gave them to anyone to read, they would probably be able to read them very, very quickly. If you're a veteran in the fantasy romance space, these are the books that you just adore. They're the books that get you out of reading slumps. I like to refer to them as my Candy Fairy Barbie Land books. Once Upon a Broken Heart is a trilogy. It is completed as well, and it is part of an interconnected universe with the Caraval books, but shocker, I didn't read them, and you can. I've had friends do and don't read them. Personally, I don't think it really matters too much. You're gonna really get the same outcome anyway. There's probably a little bit of background information, but it is explained in there, and I don't think that you are missing out a lot. Maybe I'll read Caraval eventually and actually give you guys a verdict, but I didn't want to read a whole other 3 books that I potentially just wouldn't have been into just to get to this series. You know what? Sometimes it's just do it. Who cares what the reading order is? Everyone's gonna argue. You just gotta go for it. The Heartless Hunter series, otherwise known as Crimson Moth, depending on whereabouts in the world you were situated, because they did change the name and the cover of this series once it was traditionally published, I believe. This is a duology. One of the best duologies I have ever read. The tension is absolutely fabulous. Even though I'm an Alex girly for life, let me know if you're an Alex girly like me. It is a love triangle, but it is done extremely well, and I have yet to have anybody read this series and actually hate it. If you hate it, sorry, are we friends? It does have that emotional spice in it. It's a little tiny bit of emotional spice, so I really wouldn't recommend any 16-year-olds reading it, even though it is YA. The foundation that I'm using is L'Oreal Paris True Match Super Blendable. It is 2N. I have extremely sensitive skin. I'll break out over nothing, and this has been one of the only foundations, I use this for everyday wear, that actually makes me not break out at all. Then we have Trial of Sun Queen, which is an adult fantasy romance series. Bitch Stole My Soap is the opening line of this series. It is 4 books long. They are fast-paced, they're short, they're fun. It is such a good damn time. First few books are so much fun, and then the plot really builds up in the next 2, and it's becoming really popular, which I absolutely adore. The spice in here is it's spicy, and it is hot as fuck. What kind of girl would I be if I didn't recommend One Dark Window? This is more I guess it's got more of a gothic vibe and kind of that dark eerie undertone to it, but it is another duet, so 2 books. The magic system is really unique. I'm really yet to read something else that gives me the same kind of unique magic system that this one did. There is a little bit of emotional spice in here as well, so you're not going to be left wanting. Definitely one of my favorite series to recommend. I don't think that there is a lot of people that don't like it. It's very much a safe bet to recommend to people and actually think that they are going to enjoy the series. I just use bronzer as my contour, but I think that's because I have a really skinny head, and if I was to contour, it just might make me look, it kind of makes me look a bit weird. Nude stick, and it is shade Bondi Bay, and I am currently waiting for my new one to come because, as you can see, I love it so much, I have to get a brush to get the rest of the product out. It would actually be criminal if I didn't include ACOTAR in this list. Technically a 3-book series. It does wrap up in 3 books, but then you have a novella, and then you have one of someone else's story. Every person and their cat and dog has either read this or they do know about the series, so I'm not going to harp on too much about it, except that I do love it. I guess Throne of Glass, which is my Roman Empire, it is kind of more fantasy with romance, but romance is still like a very crucial plot point of this series. It is Sarah J Maas's first series that she wrote, so it does read a little bit more young adult, but I actually feel like that can be sometimes easier for people to get into. And the reason I kind of recommend reading this last out of all her books is because once you read it, you'll just never be the same. You look back at her other books and you're like, Otherwise, I think it's an easier series to start with if you're looking at it from that point of view. I just look at it from the point of view as if you read everything else after you read Throne of Glass, you're like, yeah, no, thank you. I'm not going to read it. If you are wondering why Powerless isn't on this list, it's because I don't really like it. And there's not really much more to discuss than that, unfortunately. Sorry. Let's get into like just your, I wouldn't call them generic, but just like the fantasy romance books that you don't label as super light, but you don't label as super dark. They're kind of just like the generic way that you discuss the genre. But that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them. They're actually amazing. They're not super dark, they're not super light, they're just like that great middle ground. And honestly, there's some of my favorite books in here. Let's just get the cat out of the bag and let's just say the Empyrean series. Truly do love this series so much. I feel like everyone has probably heard of it. Fourth Wing, Iron Flame, Onyx Storm. It's a 3-book series. Currently, it is going to be 5 books. It is unfinished. It's got a good amount of spice in it as well, which we love. We love Xaden and Violet. Yay. That is not a spoiler. Everyone knows who Xaden and Violet is. Like, it's literally, you'd have to be living under a rock to not know that. I love discussing this series with my friend, and I think it is like one of those series that is really easy for people to kind of initially get into reading. The way the world is set and the way the world is discussed is very like military conversation. The words that are used are very like now in this day, so people find it really easy to read and really easy to understand. The books read like a TV show or a movie. They're very like plot-wise. I do love them. Not my favorite books in these lists. Probably stoned and someone has read this series or a Sarah J Maas book, which is honestly half the fun of reading is being able to discuss it with the friends around you and the people around you. And I have I've been a huge reader since I was 18, I'd like to say 18, and I am now 27. So I've been a huge reader since then. I've noticed in the last year and a half, especially, I literally can throw stones and hit people who have read books. Even some of my best friends now are becoming like readers, and it has been so much fun to discuss books. So that is why the Empyrean series is on my master list. I am using Rare Beauty Blush. God, I probably had this blush way past its expiry date because it never ends. And like, I'm hitting pan on other my stuff. This is in shade Hope, The Road of Bones. Series is incomplete, unfortunately. Witcher and the Vikings had a little love child. I mean, the best writing I have come across in the genre. I couldn't believe like book 1 was 5 stars and then book 2 was 5 stars too. Like, I had no extra stars to give to it. Because I want to call books 6 stars. It's just not really the case. I only really go to 5-star ratings. Our main male lead is just such a green flag. He's the epitome of I'll stand next to you and not in front of you. We love him. We love him. He is one of my top book boyfriends, which we will eventually get to do a video on that, which that will probably be the hardest video I've ever made. Main female character, Scylla. I think she's my favorite. She is my favorite female character of all times. She is extremely flawed, but at the same time, she's very realistic. I am keeping my eyeshadow really simple today, and I'm just using this Makeup Forever palette and just using the brown. Sometimes like simple is best. You don't need to overcomplicate it. I can't tell you what. It's called the Artesian Color Pro Palette. Daughter of No Worlds. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. This is a completed trilogy. Closest thing to ever make me feel the same way that Throne of Glass did. It's emotional spice, so it's not crazy. It is more plot driven than romance driven, and absolutely phenomenal. I know most people read Carissa Broadbent books through her Serpent in the Wings of Night duology, and if you've read that and you haven't read these books, like, what are you doing? Because this is such a, like, so good. All my mutuals love it, and I think they have pretty damn good book taste. Right now, I'm putting some translucent powder on my lashes because it does make them hold up and stay longer. Max, main male lead in this series, is also like the epitome of a tortured, broken, broody soul. And he does, in fact, teach her to make, like, I'm pretty sure it's butterflies, like magical butterflies. He's like a very reluctant hero in this story, but we love him. I like to say that if you haven't read this series, do you even like reading fantasy romance? Because it is that good. It really is. Some books are masterpieces and some books are fun, and this is a masterpiece. The Age of Vampires completed 7 book series. Oh my gosh. I'm yet to read the last 2, mainly because they're not on audio yet, but I'm still going to recommend it because those 5 books, they are fire. Actually, a new addition to this list. They're really easy to read. They're fast paced. They're not super long. They're all under like about 400 pages. The world is very like dystopian. Humans are like kept as like cattle for vampires. So vampires, vampire slayers, but the perfect amount of spice. It is a slow burn as well. From book 1 has no spice in it, which is honestly, that's exactly what I want in my fantasy romance. I don't want the spice in book 1. Tease me, please. It's actually by the same authors as the Zodiac Academy series. I've read most of Zodiac Academy books, and a lot of people have gone, which ones do I read first, this or Zodiac Academy? And I actually think that you should read this series first because it's a little bit more manageable size-wise. And I think it's extremely fun, and it doesn't have that same cringy comedy that can take like a few books to get into with the Zodiac Academy series. If you like this, I can be very certain that you will indeed like Zodiac Academy. They're not connected at all. I first thought maybe they were, but they're not. It's just a completely on its own standalone series. I don't know, it just made me feel so much. It's made me feel a lot of emotions in it. I think it's really, I don't want to say well written, but like plotted out really well. Phantasma. This is a standalone book, well, an interconnected standalone, so it is, I'm sorry guys, I'm just slightly dying here for some reason. Attempt like 10 of trying to talk because my throat is really dry at the back for some reason. I'm not sick. I've gotten like a cough lolly to see if it will soothe it. So where was I? So each couple will get a completed story from start to finish. And you could technically probably, I haven't read the next book, but you could probably read them out of order if you wanted to. I do this all the time with standalone series. I'm terrible, but you'll obviously get a little bit more information if you do read them from the start, but like if you skip them, it's not the end of the world. The audio is really good. It is single narration, but phenomenal still. Spooky, haunted house kind of vibe. He's a ghost, well, phantom. He can de-ghost, re-ghost. There's games and trials. It's very fun. If you've ever watched Squid Games, that's like exactly like it's like, but in like fantasy romance and ghost format. Oh, and this is MCO Beauty, which is, it's kind of a dupe of NARS. Crescent City is going to sort of land on this list. I have such a hate-love relationship with this book series because I think that book 1 and book 2 are phenomenal. Like, everybody has to read it to experience. I think it really opens people up to reading more urban fantasy romance, such an undervalued genre. I'll say that book 1 of Crescent City is probably one of my favorite books of all time. I know that there's a lot of world building, you just like so much into it. Damn, the emotions that book sparked and like really hit close to home for me. Scattered Bones. 260 pages of emotional damage. If you loved Assassin's Blade, then I don't know what you're doing, then not reading this book. It's a standalone, there's no other books in the series. It is an absolute must read. It's beautiful and haunting. There is spice in here. It's a bit more on the emotional side, but there is enough in it. I did not think that a 260 page book could make me feel the things that I did. I wish there was more. Give me 14 more of them, please. This is not a spoiler, but her lover's bones are scattered in different locations and she has to find them and try to put them back together. It sounds bizarre. Now, this is a very, very special book series to me because this man, Darian motherfucking Carcel, is my #1 book boyfriend. There is no other book boyfriend that I think could ever top him. It is the House of Devils series. I think it's a 6-book series. I could be wrong. There is 3 books out, and the 4th book out is going to be this year. Urban fantasy. What Crescent City didn't. I think it's like Crescent City, but done better, and like the storyline is different. Series did, in fact, have me bawling my eyes out at certain moments of it, and honestly, if it makes me cry, it's a 5-star. There's no question about it. Or is there? He is the perfect combination of like broody asshole who's also a bit dangerous and a bit of a red flag, but he is just like so sweet, caring. Like if he wanted to, he would. And I'm also married, but he's my number 1 book boyfriend, and that's fine. I'm allowed to have book boyfriends. It's fine, guys. My husband is cool with it. I like to set my cream products with powder because it makes it last longer. This is Hourglass Cosmetics. This is Luminous Finish. It is a bit hard to read because it's very well loved. And we are wrapping up that, and we're moving on to dark fantasy. Dark fantasy can really scale from anything between light and like super fucked up, like super bad to me. And I think it's very hard to discern what the actual dark fantasy genre is. I don't really set hard or fast rules. It's so dark that you need trigger warning. It should be classified as dark fantasy. So you kind of cover heavy and emotional topics like a lot of loss, sorry, not so much loss, but like non-con and dubious consent. Very much to me, if that's in a book, that's very much a dark fantasy, because you are covering such heavy topics that I do think need triggers, and you do need to go into them prepared. But it can also be like the world that you're in, like that very dark, violent, grungy world, but that normally coincides with things being very violent and needing trigger warnings and being in dark fantasy. A book that does very much contradict this genre would be One Dark Window, because it's very like the environment that it's set in is very gothic, very dark, very mysterious. Really does screw with how I put things in certain categories. But for me, that is not dark. It doesn't really it just really isn't at all. It's just really more like a gothic fantasy romance, which is another subgenre. There's so many subgenres of fantasy romance books that you can really put them into. It is actually nuts. We're gonna do one that I get told all the time on videos, that Quicksilver is not dark fantasy. But the man is written like a dark romance fan. Like, hand collars, man. Hand collars. You're telling me that ain't dark romance? No, that doesn't really happen in light, fluffy romance a lot of the time. Again, this is how I view it. Very much on the lighter scale of dark fantasy, but it is dark. It isn't light, airy, fairy, fluffy romance. Like, have heavy themes and topics discussed into it. I do love Quicksilver. There is only 1 book so far. Book 2, I think, is out this year. The spice in it, it's good. There's not a lot, but it is a little bit less vanilla. It's like very much just teetering on the edge of like getting a little bit spicy. Such a good gateway into dark fantasy, which I get so excited about. A book that isn't really fantasy romance, and I'll probably get yelled at for including it in here, but it's like almost got a magical sort of element to it, and it is Zodiac Academia, is Nocticadia, which that book does deserve 6 stars. It is so spooky, so eerie. Like, the writing is phenomenal. It literally made me want to like hide in a closet, but also like kick my feet like a little schoolgirl. I don't know if that's weird, but anyway. It's a true standalone book. Some people have said, at least it ends on a cliffhanger. I'm like, what cliffhanger? What are you talking about? And there is another couple potentially at the end, and there is a novella. So if you haven't read the novella, which I haven't, but I know it's there for read when I really want to, you can read the novella, and maybe that's what they're talking about. Maybe, but I don't know what they're talking about on this damn cliffhanger. Zodiac Academy. This is a bully romance. This is like a 9-book series, and you definitely must follow Jamie's reading order. She has a whole YouTube video on the best way to read it, and I highly, highly recommend, because I read Ruthless Boys with it. It was a spin-off series to Zodiac Academy, and it was the best fun I've ever had. Both these series have made me laugh, they made me cry, they made me giggle. Like, they just absolutely ruined my life. If you think an author won't do something, they'll do it, because they do. It surprised me how much I love this. I did read book 1 like a very long time ago. I was like, yeah, nah, it's not for me. Picked it back up again at the beginning or end of last year, and I was like, I may have been wrong. I got to book 2 and I was like, yeah, I may have judged this book a bit too early, and it is definitely a Roman Empire series. It's very, very epic. It has that throne of glass feel in a sense that everything is leading up to a huge epic battle. I'm so excited to finish it, but I just highly, highly recommend it. Ruthless Boys, which is the spin-off series, has like such a special place in my heart. I got to book 2 and I was like, I still don't know if I like it. I just wanted to not like it because I was like, I just want to get back to Zodiac Academy. And then I finished it. I was like, what do I do with my life? What do I do? Like, whenever I needed a laugh, I just put it on. Honestly, I miss it. I want to be a Mindy forever. The girls who get it. A Mid-Cloud of Bones, a true standalone. And there is a bit of discourse on Book Talk recently about this. I genuinely do not understand it. 400 pages. It is fast-paced. It is fun. It is surprising. It is the best love triangle you will ever read. I don't really care if that puts you off, because I think that you just need to grow up if you say you hate a love triangle. Sorry, I love you still. This is a lip stain pen from Savvy by DB. It's like $10. It's dark. The world isn't so much dark, but like the themes in it is a bit dark. Like the spice is definitely a bit on the kinkier side, and it's quite spicy. Genuinely, I couldn't figure out the entire time who the main love interest was, which to me, bells go off and I'm like, yeah, this is a good book. The Lady of Darkness series, which is, in fact, my Roman Empire. Well, Melissa K. Roerich is my Roman Empire. On the lighter side of fantasy, dark fantasy romance, we cover some heavy themes and heavy topics in this series that you don't always get. So make sure you do read the trigger warnings for all these, please. If I haven't said that yet, do read the trigger warnings. 5-book series with a novella. As you go along the series, a lot more POVs are introduced, which I love. She writes very good characters, complex backgrounds and complex emotions. Like, there's very much something that stuck out to me in Lady of Darkness. Don't see a lot of in books is characters do things that aren't always great. Characters make mistakes, and instead of glossing over it, or the characters throwing them to the trash can, essentially, her characters then hold the other characters accountable. It says, we love you, but you need to take accountability for your actions. And that is something that I don't think is done a lot of the time. Her books just really resonate with me. It's actually connected to my favorite series of all time, which is the Legacies series. It's an interconnected universe. You have Easter eggs and plot points throughout it. The series are very different. Put them together, it is such an experience. My recommended reading order personally would be to read Legacies book 1 and 2 to finish all the Lady of Darkness, and then to read Legacies book 3, and then book 4 will be out late in August this year, which is the final completed book for the Legacies series, which is a lot darker. The vibe from the Lady of Darkness to the Legacies is very, very different. Legacies is very toxic. Want to throw your Kindle, want to like rip out your hair, like very, very different vibe. Lady of Darkness is very high fantasy. Legacies is like urban fantasy as well. So again, interconnected universe. You will not read about a series that makes you honestly, sometimes I just want to, what the fuck is going on with these characters? Every book on the Legacy series, book 1, 2, 3 have all been complete 5 stars, like actual phenomenal. I don't think I've read another series yet that has been all books be 5 stars. Like, isn't that crazy? Like, I think that's actually crazy. Like Legacies, you're going to like these next 2 books, vice versa. I always find myself recommending them and coincidentally with each other because they're just incredible. They're incredible. They're very completely different, but they just have this same vibe about them. The emotional torment and emotional pull that I feel like that isn't that common. And I think the writing also makes you question your life choices and makes you question your sanity. Manacled. Standalone, and has been traditionally published into Alchemized, which is releasing this year. It's very hard to get your hands on Manacled now, which is a fan fiction of Harry Potter, the Hermione fanfic. So I can't even remember. Hermione and Draco. It's very, very dark. Very, very dark thing. If you've ever watched The Handmaid's Tale, I have not, but I know that's what it's like. The Handmaid's Tale, that is like the kind of vibe that is going on. And again, if you like Legacies, it's that very toxic male that you don't know if you like or if you not like, but they're like very traumatized and they're a product of their upbringing. Judging by the blurb, it sounds like it's very much similar. She will have had to put a lot of world building into this book. Like, this Manacled is huge. It is like 1,000 pages, I believe. I don't actually know how big it is. The author will have to create a whole new magic system, because fan fiction relies on using existing work so that they don't have to build up so much the character description so much, or the characters' backgrounds, or the magic system. Regardless, it's an incredible book. So it will be interesting to see how she goes about that, and I am very, very excited to read it. I will put the release date up on here for you. I just can't remember off the top of my head. Probably not going to be able to find Manacle to read because it has been taken down all off the fan fiction sites, which I don't know why they have to do that. I feel like they should just keep it up, but whatever. You'll be able to read it here, and I'm sure that it will be, I'm pretty sure it's going to be very much the same. For a Raven's Duet. Wow. One of the most unhinged, darkest, like, book series that I've ever read. They are Raven Shifters. It is so dark. You must absolutely check your trigger warnings on this. This is the epitome of what dark fantasy romance should be. It should be called pitch black dark fantasy, if I'm being entirely real with you. I think I will ever truly get over. I think I found it on the depths of Reddit. I think I was looking through I needed something a bit more like legacies. I think I was like, oh, I really want, because it's an MF romance. So there's two males, one female, but no sword crossing. So in though like MFM, it does matter where the F sits. If it was an FMM, it would mean that the males had sort of a sexual relationship, but in this one they do not. There was her and then two love interests. It's not a love triangle for that matter either. She goes to Paris. I hope my grandma is not watching this or does not understand what go to Paris means. I'm sorry. Don't Google it. Go read this, and then yeah, and then you'll probably never be the same. That was the beginning of the rabbit hole for me. For some reason, I did not actually rate this book 5 stars. I think because I was still new to the Unhinged. My brain was thinking, oh, I can't be into this. Well, I in fact am, and you know, sometimes you read a book and then sometimes you just sit on it and you think about it for months and months and months later, and you're like, okay, I probably should have given this a higher rating. Probably need to go back and adjust it. You know what? One size doesn't fit all, apparently. As much as I'd like everything to fit in a box, it absolutely does not. If I didn't mention it, it's a completed duology, so 2 books. The Plated Prisoner series. You are not ready. You are not ready. When people tell you that book 1 is a bit of a it's a doozy. It is a doozy, so you have to make sure you read up to book 2. There is, how many books? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think there's 7. I think there's 7 books. I still have to read the very last book in this series. Yes, sometimes I have commitment issues even though I'm married. Too many books and like not enough time, unfortunately. But hair is pretty much partially done, so I don't need to do too much to it. I'm just going to fix, I think, the front pieces. We're on like day 3 hair. I only wash my hair like once a week. I'll style it and then pretty much leave it alone and not do anything else about it. So Plated Prisoners is a Dark King Midas retelling, and it is dark. Like, it's not called a Raven's Dark, but it is definitely dark fantasy. High spice, lots of emotional damage, really, really good plot as well. Anyone has watched Bridgerton and they love those the carriage scene where they get in the carriage. Read this series, because you are in fact yourself a lovely, very long, spicy carriage scene. Knights of Obedience. Yeah, do you want to question your morals and your sanity? Then you absolutely must read this series. Well, duet. It is an incomplete duet. I think book 2 will be out this year. I think. The author had to finish her other series before completing this one, which totally respect. But God, I am waiting for the next one. If you've read Avatar, think Amaranth's Court, but under the mountain, and like they're both captured. Yeah, it's spicy. It's the kind of spice that really makes you go, what the fuck is wrong with me? Roman Empire books, I think about it probably at least once a day. Yeah. So unbearable when the next book comes out. All Your Bloody Lies. This is a new one to my master list. Unfortunately, this is also a duet that is incomplete, but I've been assured that book 2 will be out this year, so don't worry. It is being referred to as mindfuck, but paranormal. Torturous, it is painful, it is spicy. She's an unaliver of men who definitely deserve it. It's funny. The side characters in this are phenomenal. Look at all the trigger warnings because there's a lot of triggers. These are all very, very dark. These last few 5 are they're being extremely dark, and you absolutely do need to check your trigger warnings before you read them. One I forgot. I looked at my list and I forgot to talk about it earlier, which is the Liza Lena. Oh my god. 6-star series. This will be a 5-book series. So unfortunately it is incomplete. The emotional torment and pain that you go through is also like very Throne of Glass vibes. People ask, is this a wide choose? What is this? It is not a wide choose. It's a male and a female. That is it, but there is some fun had in between. Elders and so much dark fantasies, but it is some heavy topics. There's some very heavy topics in this. Thank you for getting ready with me, guys. I'm now going to run some errands, film some content, and just have a relaxing Sunday. But let me know if there's any in particular things that you want to see from me, any content. Please just let me know. I'm still learning. I'm still new here. I am so sorry if I said and end like a million times. Like I really am, and I'm going to work on where to find my eyes in the camera. So please stick with me. I promise I'll get better, and make sure to subscribe. I think that's what I meant to say. Anyway, bye guys.